Hello and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to write Python scripting inside of the SCADA platform Ignition. I'm going to show you how to do it in 3 different places, and we are going to cover a lot of material. So let's get right into it. Today, we're going to talk about one of the things that makes Ignition so incredibly powerful and super easy for traditional programmers to break into the world of industrial controls and automation, but also for controls and automation engineers to learn a little bit more of the conventional programming skills, so to speak. And part of the reason for that is you can write code in Python. And so to do this, I'm going to actually save us a little bit of trouble of watching me scrap together a piece of Python code, but I'm going to propose a scenario for you guys. And hopefully you can see in the bottom left here, I have a tag that I've created called input array, okay? And it is just an integer array. So there are 10 integers inside of this array, and that is all that's in there. And we can, just manually remove rows if we want to. It's just a memory tag. It's a block of integers. But let's say I want to write a script that's going to dynamically read through that integer array, look at how many elements are inside of that integer array, and create a tag for each of those elements individually. This could be useful for trending, like creating historical graphs of temperatures and flows and things like that, or a variety of purposes. So there are a lot of reasons you might want to do this inside of Python rather than break it out when you're like reading a block of data from a PLC, for example. You might read that in as an array. So let's take a look now. I'm assuming you have a reason you want to write Python in Ignition. So let's take a look at first example of just how to test a script while writing it in Python. So your best friend as a developer, when you're inside of Ignition Designer and you want to test some Python script, is the script console. So if you go to Tools at the top and then Script Console, it's going to open a window that looks kind of like a very bare bones IDE in a conventional like programming setting, like a Jupyter Notebooks or something. None of the bells and whistles of like a PyCharm or VS Code, but the idea is you write code on the left and it gives you output on the right. So I'll talk you through the code that I've written already, and hopefully you can tell if you're somewhat familiar with the Python syntax that other than knowing some specific Ignition syntax in here, the code really reads like Python. It's a variable set equal to a value. It's for I in range, whatever, try except for I in range, right? Like this is Python code with some Ignition specific syntax. You'll just have to refer to Ignition forums, ask a friend, ask the internet, ask Ignition support if you don't know the specific syntax of the thing that you're trying to do. But basically, this is a script to take elements of an array and break them into child tags, okay? So there are a lot of ways to do this. This script is in no way the only way you could do this sort of functionality, but I start by reading the raw data from the input array tag, and then I define the path where I'm going to store and delete any child tags. So the first thing I do, and I'm kind of using a fudge factor here of 20, but first thing I'm going to do is clear out any tags that might already be in there. So if I've already done this script previously and there were, let's say, 6 array elements already sitting in there, this code will go through and it will delete those all out. And then what it's going to do is for I in range length of the data. So in the length of the array, it's going to define a new tag that will be called array element 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to whatever length we have. And then it's going to configure the tag, meaning create the tag, and then it will write a value to that tag of whatever's in that array. So is this a somewhat confusing example? I hope not. But remember, I have an array here that has the values in it of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. So our goal is to create and you can see there's no drop down in the child tags folder currently. Our goal is to write a Python script that is going to read the data from that tag, and then it's going to create 6 children tags that say 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. That should be what this code does. And so if I execute it, you'll see I actually get bad not found, which is completely fine because that's the delete code not finding the tags. And then all of the goods are the configuration and the right blocking working. So if we click on child tags over on the left, now you'll see we've dynamically created array element 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just 0 through 5, which is cool. And their values are 10 through 60, which makes intuitive sense. But now let's pop into our array, and let's say between 10 and between 30 and 40, we have 35, right? And after 60, we have 70. Okay, so let's say that the array has just been updated, and now there's 8 values. And what you'll see is the script in the script console isn't going to automatically update it. We have to hit execute again. But when we hit execute again, the same code works, and it gives us 10, 20, 30, 35, 40, 50, 60, and 70. Okay, so this is some very basic code to generate tags as you rip them out of an array dynamically, as well as clear out children tags that may have already been in there. This is pretty cool, but I think what you guys are probably noticing already, and it's no big deal if not, but it's not super convenient to have to manually execute a script every time an array updates. And so what we want to do is explore how to get that code firing on tag change. And that's what we're going to talk about now, because there are a lot of places that you can embed this script that we've just written into a different location that will do some of that functionality for you automatically. So let's take a look at the first one, and I'm not going to lie, we are pretty much immediately going to look at better places to store this scripting. But if you have simple Python functionality that you want to do, you can double click on a tag or right click and hit edit tags, and then there's an option on the left for scripting. And for every tag, value change and quality change are going to be 2 of your options, as well as alarm events, but we're not going to talk about alarms in today's video. And quality change means like if you're reading values off of a PLC and the quality goes from good, healthy, I can see this tag, to oh bad, oh crap, I can't see the tag, you could do something here. But what we're going to do is value change. And when the value of an array changes, that means 2 things. Either we've changed one of the integers inside of the array, or we've changed something about the array itself, like the overall dimensions. So we're going to drop the code that we just wrote inside of this value change location. And what you can probably see just by looking at kind of what's available to you here, they give you some values available to you just by the nature of it being a value change script. So you could use the tag path of this tag, the tag itself, the previous value, or the current value in this tag change script. So theoretically, rather than reading the value of this tag, we could just use current value. That's a little bit of Ignition specific syntax. If you have questions about that, let me know in the comments below and we can talk about it more. But I'm actually going to leave the code exactly as is, just to illustrate that it works exactly as is. And then one thing I'm going to add here is I'm going to add a logger. And this is basically Ignition's version of like a web hosted by their gateway console window. So think of the print statement in a conventional Python script. Logger is like Ignition's way of giving you that same functionality. So if you do logger equals, and then the specific syntax is system.util.get logger, just like that. And then you get to define a name. So we will call ours Python tutorial. Okay. I love Python tutorials. All right, and then what we're going to do is logger.info, and there are a few classes of logger. You could do logger.warn, debug, info. There might be more, but trace, I think, is one. But basically, I'm just going to do logger.info, which is the easiest one, and we'll just say this came from a tag change script, okay, with an exclamation mark. We'll drop it right there. And all this should do is when we update this, if the script works, this should appear in the logs on the gateway. And I'll show you how to get there in just a second. But for now, let's hit OK. And let's hit save on our project. And nothing happens because the array still has the value it already had. But let's pop in here and let's add 80, 90, And just to mess with the people with OCD, let's make this one 1000. Okay, and let's hit apply and okay. And you can see the array elements are already there, and they're there in the order that we defined in the previous scripting, and they're already populated 0 to 10 with all 11 elements. So now if I pop back into the array and I delete, let's say 1000 all the way up to 30. So there's just these 2 rows in there, 10 and 20, and I hit apply again and I hit okay. All right, so just by putting in a value change script, this code is working. And now if I go to my gateway, right, if I go to my host here and disregard everything before like 2314, because that was me testing and setting up for this tutorial. But what you can see is Python tutorial, right, the logger name that I just gave to this logger is saying, hey, this message came from a tag script, this came from a tag script, this came from a tag script. So that represents the 3 times the script ran. It's logging it at each time, and you get a timestamp of when it happened. You get here when you're on the gateway and you're at home, you go to status and then you go to logs. And this is absolutely going to be an Ignition developer's best friend, especially if you're trying to set up Python scripting and you're getting weird errors and you're not sure how to track it down. You're going to want to rely on logging a lot of information. Okay, so I think I kind of alluded to already, not alluded to, I directly said it. We're going to move this. This is not necessarily the best spot to have this kind of scripting live. It is absolutely acceptable. And if you have smaller applications or you're the sole developer for a plant, put the code where you want to put the code. But in the instance of wanting to store the code somewhere where it's maybe easier to share, easier to immediately see all of the scripts that are executing in a project, you want to keep it elsewhere. I think now is a perfect time to take a quick pause and talk to you about the sponsor of today's video, PCBWay. PCBWay is a long-term supporter of the Lemaster Tech channel, and I love working with them because their products and services are all about empowering makers. As their name suggests, the core of their business is manufacturing PCBs or printed circuit boards. This is such a cool way for hobbyists and makers to turn their electronic designs into super high quality and professional grade circuit boards. Beyond that, they also have the ability to support all your prototyping needs with high quality 3D printing and metal fabrication as well. Be sure to check them out at the description below this video, and thank you so much to PCBWay for sponsoring the video. So what I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna delete this right now because you never know, maybe you want to turn it back on. I'm just gonna uncheck this enabled box. And so now what you'll see, if I update my array, okay, so let's just add 30 and 40 back in here. 30, 40, okay, and I hit apply and I hit apply and I hit okay and I hit save. You'll see the array elements do not update, and that is because we disabled the script that is on there. So if you go to scripting, you go to value change, it is not enabled. Okay, so let's look at the better place to put it, and I already have it highlighted actually, but in the project browser in the top left, if you go to scripting, there is gateway events as well as project library. Let's start with gateway events. Okay, and you can see these ones over on the left, they all have utility. We'll probably get to a tutorial on almost all of them eventually, but for now, let's click on tag change, okay? And what we're going to do is we're gonna call this array breakout, all right? That's what we'll call this script. And change triggers, I almost always turn off quality and timestamp because I want to trigger on the value changing of this tag. So I'm gonna grab the path of this input array tag by right clicking and going down to copy path. And then in my gateway events here, I'm just gonna drop the tag path here. Now you don't need to copy path like that. You can just hit your tag, and if you have a small system, you're probably able to just go right to it and find it pretty quick, just like that. But you can see that's just the same way, a second way of getting the same data, okay? So we have the code in here, and now we need to put our script in here. So I'm gonna go in here and copy the entire script, okay? And then back to my gateway events, and I'm gonna drop that code in. It always does this funky indentation stuff, but don't worry about it. It's the exact same code. The only thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change from logger.info, I'm gonna change it to this came from a gateway script, okay? So a gateway event script. Now I'm gonna hit apply, and I'm gonna hit okay, and I'm gonna hit save, which sends it live. And you can see it update immediately, right? There's 10, 20, 30, 40. We'll go back in, we'll add 50 just so you guys can see I'm not crazy. Well, I'm crazy, but not that way. Okay, so we already have tag 50, which is awesome. And if we go back to the logs, you'll see this came from a gateway event script. Okay, so we had those tag change scripts. Now we have our gateway event scripts. So that is a super useful thing to know, a thing to store, and then also useful to know, excuse me, tag value change scripts are obviously living on the tag themselves. So that's on the tag provider in the tag browser. This gateway event is going to be executed at the gateway level, meaning it's using gateway resources and is not project specific. So something that we can do is we can make a project library, and this is just another place to store a script. Honestly, I'm not here to tell you which one of these is best and worst. Like if you prefer the code living on the tag that's firing it, that's honestly fine. As you get to larger systems and you maybe have hundreds of tag change scripts, it might be very useful for you to see all of those in one spot. But as long as you're documenting where everything lives, it's totally fine to just mix and match, try a little bit of everything. But let's go ahead and copy this script. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in a new location. And so I'm going to go into, now I'm in scripting and I am in project library. And I'm going to create a new script and I will call this array breakout. Okay. And in here, just like in a conventional Python IDE, I'm going to create a function. I'll call it run, and I'll put all of this code inside of it. But now I'm going to have in the logger, I'm going to say this came from a project stored script. Okay, so I'm going to save this file, array breakout. And first thing, easiest thing is if I go back into gateway events and I tags and I disable this one so that it's not firing for now. First thing you'll be able to see is if I go in here and I add, let's say now that this is 60, okay, then you'll see the thing doesn't update automatically, right? But if I were to go back to the script console, I actually don't know if this will work, so let's just see. If I were to import array breakout, which is the file that those work in, and let's say as AB, so I don't have to type that, and then I just do ab.run like that. And if I hit execute on this, execute, okay, it actually worked. We got 60. And so the script console is able to take that command that we just stored in a file and execute it. And I think if we go to the logs, you can see that actually that one didn't store. This came from a gateway event script. Did it? This came from a project. Yeah, which is actually a feature of the script console. If you're sort of new to scope in Ignition, just know that script console is a local thing and it's not hitting the gateway. And so when you are messing around in here, you can't use the logger, but you could use this interactive interpreter on the right side. So you could swap out logger statements for print statements and they would show up on the right, but they would not appear in your gateway logs. Okay. But let's go one step further, basically the final step, and show how you might want to use this. Rather than, as this code gets longer and longer and more convoluted, rather than having all that code live here, you could do this. You could call the script that lives in the array breakout folder, and you could just tell it to run when this tag value changes. So I'm going to enable that. I'm going to say OK and say all right. And now I'm going to save everything, and I'm going to go into the array. And I am going to add a bunch more tags. And we'll say this is 63, 66, 70, 75, 80. Okay, so I add a bunch more tags. I hit OK. And what you'll see is we get all those tags. We get 63, 66, 70, 75, 80. And what just happened is this root tag input array changed. We triggered a gateway event for tag change script that then called a script that we stored in array breakout, and it ran this file. Is that convoluted? You bet. Was that the best way I could think of showing you all the different places and ways that you could write Python? Also, yes. Okay. And so if you look at the logs after a test like that, you'll see now we have this came from a project stored script. This came from a project stored script. because it did, because now this one is firing. And if you'd like to see evidence that both the gateway event and the stored script are firing, we can do this. We can say both a logger for this came from a gateway script, and then underneath it, this came from a stored script. And if we save it and delete one of our tags, delete, okay, apply, okay, and hit save. All right, so 80 drops off, but more importantly, both of those just ran. And so if you look at the script, you'll see this came from a project stored script, fires. This way came from a gateway script. This came from a project stored script. This came from a gateway script, okay? So you see them firing one after another. Because also every time you save in a project, your tag change gateway events are going to fire to cover their butts, because they don't necessarily know if the tag changed during that saving instance. So just know that as well. If you're seeing weird behavior in logs of like multiple instances, odds are you're doing Control S a whole lot, which I do fairly frequently. But okay. Anyways, things we covered: super speed. We covered how to use the script console for basic code compilation. We covered how to put scripting directly on a tag with value changed. We even covered how to generate and delete tags a little bit using Ignition scripting in Python, which is useful. And then we covered gateway tag change events as well as storing scripting. So this is a lot to cram into one tutorial. I know this was pretty dense, and I know I moved pretty fast, but there was a lot to cover, so I hope you found it useful. I hope you've been enjoying the Ignition tutorial series. If so, please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments below what you'd like to see next on the channel. Don't forget to check out the sponsor link in the description of the video as well. And if you would like to consider becoming a super supporter of the channel, my Patreon link is down there below. I appreciate the heck out of everyone who likes and supports the Master Tech YouTube in any way. So as always, thank you for watching. See you next time. Thanks. Bye.